We are going to be talking about the new laws, about what we need to understand in order to preserve pretty much our legacy when we're faced with a dramatic health crisis that some of us may encounter as we are living longer. And a reminder that we are a law firm. There are 9 attorneys, and Chris Carroll, our CEO. And what I always like to tell everybody is that when you hire one of us, you hire all of us. And our company is located in various offices throughout Southern California, and we have an absolutely terrific staff. As you can see, the staff is absolutely wonderful, smiling, ready to help you. And not only are they beautiful people, but they are highly educated and motivated to assist us all in solving your problems. The locations that we have the main office in South Coast Metro by the Orange County Airport. There's an office in San Jose, Santa Cruz, San Diego, Sacramento, and my favorite office, because that is where we're sitting today, is in Temecula, California. And the agenda. The agenda, if you look at it, appears to be, I'm going to learn nothing new. I'm not going to be interested. I'm going to fall asleep after 5 minutes. But what I really want to concentrate on is I'm going to give you sort of an introduction, kind of an overview of things that I understand is going on in our life. And that is, what are the concerns that we have as we get older? What are the top concerns that we are experiencing? And some of those horrible statistics that we have to face. And then the other chart is not to scare you, but it is a realistic chart that's going to identify what is really the cost of care in California, and then how in the heck are we going to be able to pay for it if this happens to us. And then I'm going to focus on the changes that are occurring in the Medi-Cal world, and then offer how we can help you. So this is pretty much the agenda that I'm going to follow this morning. Now, top concerns. We all know that we are living longer. That is not a secret. We can look at magazines that taunt, for example, that we're going to be living to age 100. Babies that are born today are going to be living probably to 110. We are living longer, and medicines has assisted us in achieving this longevity. But at the same time, we all have to be realistic, and this realization is that as we get older, we're not going to be as peppy as we were when we were in our 20s. We may be living to be 95 and 100, but maybe those last years are going to become pretty much not the best years of our life, even though we're alive, because we're going to be ill. And the top concerns for most of us is, what happens if I become ill? And I'm not talking about a simple cold. I'm talking about an illness that really is devastating. A lot of us perhaps may be thinking, are we going to lose our memory? Are we going to wind up getting Alzheimer's? None of us, I think, want to be a burden on our family. That's something that all of us, I think, want to avoid. And the other concern is, and this is a major concern also, is the fact that none of us want to outlive our money. And that is critical when we start to look at the cost of care as we get older. The bottom concern for us is dying. None of us really worry about dying because there's nothing that really we can do about it. Something is going to take us out from where we are today, so why worry about it? Now, the statistics that we have uncovered, there are other statistics, but the reason for having this chart is simply, again, to drive home the issue, to drive home the realization, and that is that as we age, we are more susceptible to certain forms of care. We may fall down. We may wind up with severe diabetes. We may wind up with Alzheimer's. We may wind up with Parkinson's. We might simply wind up in an auto accident. There's so many things that can happen. And we're all, as we have gotten older, we realize that events in our life can occur and our life can be turned upside down in a second. Statistically, this is 70% of people over age 65 are going to need some form of long-term care. Now, when I use the term long-term care, I am not simply addressing nursing home. Long-term care can mean having somebody come into our home to assist us on maybe bathing, maybe mobilization. So it's not necessarily nursing home that I'm talking about when I refer to long-term care. The Alzheimer's, for example, has increased by 46%, and it's one of the major causes of death in the United States. And the average cost of care in skilled nursing facilities has increased tremendously. And as everything else, inflation is rampant throughout everything, and it will be expected to continue to increase. So the things that we are facing are, we are living longer, but some of the latter years may not be our best years in the sense that we are afflicted by some form of illness that will require some form of care. And statistically also, if we wind up in a nursing home, the average stay in a nursing home is about 2.5 years. And they have arrived at these statistics because you don't go into a nursing home when you're feeling super healthy. And you're generally in a position of being in a devastated situation, physically or mentally. And therefore, statistically, you may wind up for at least 3 years. Now, there are some cases that people stay longer, and some cases where they stay shorter, but the average is for 3 years. So in the type of planning that we have to do is really plan for the optimum, which would be the ability to be able to care for a minimum or at least 3 years in a nursing home. Now, the next bullet on your chart, women are more likely to require care. Now, why do I say that? It's not that women are a weaker gender. It is because they outlive males. They will outlive their husbands. If a husband becomes ill, the spouse is there to care for him. The spouse can take care of him at home for a longer period of time. But when the husband passes away and the wife, the spouse, is left alone, she is maybe without immediate support. And that is why women are more likely to require outside care, because they have been left without a partner, or maybe the children live too far away to be able to come and help her. So let's look at the cost of care in California. Everything that we do obviously costs money, but the charts are, in my opinion, are staggering. And every year that we update these charts, it gets worse. For example, if you look at the chart, the first top line, it basically talks about home health aid. That is somebody coming in, or a homemaker coming into the home and helping maybe your spouse to take care of you. There are many institutions, many facilities that advertise home health care. And when you start to price the cost of these institutions per month, they're averaging about $6,700 a month. That's for in-home care, for somebody to come into the house to take care of you. I personally have experienced this. My wife became ill several years ago, and I had to hire a home health aide to come in and help me. Fortunately, I found an absolute angel to come in and help me. And it didn't cost me $6,000-7,000 a month, but I was paying a substantial amount of money that obviously was not within your normal budget. And so I have experienced myself the expense of having somebody just come into the house and take care of a spouse. Assisted living facilities. The average in California is running about $5,800 a month. Then when you get into nursing home care, a semi-private room in a nursing home, almost $11,000 a month. Think about it. $11,000 a month. And if you wind up in a private room, they want over $13,000 a month for a private room. These amounts are staggering. So the challenge that we all have, you, your neighbor, ourselves, the challenge is there's a rise in age-related illnesses that can last for years. There's a form of procrastination when you don't want to do this type of planning. There's a form of denial that occurs in all of us. For example, this will never happen to me. I feel great. I'm taking my fruits and vegetables, those 6 pills a day that you take. You feel fantastic, and it will never happen to me. So there's a built-in, I think, human resistance to thinking that a calamity like this could apply to us. It is true. As we get older, we might be subjected to illnesses that can last many years. So how do we protect our estate? How do we protect what we have from the loss due to illnesses and incapacity? Think about it. You save money all your life. You have struggled. You have sacrificed. You have achieved a wonderful estate. You have achieved a form of security in the amount of funds that you have set aside for retirement, your home, and so forth. And then, through no fault of yours, you wind up subjected to illness that you never thought could happen to you, or you may have a severe fall or be subjected to maybe an auto accident and so forth. And then you wind up in a situation of incapacity, something that you'd never planned for, something that you thought never would happen to you. And therefore, you're faced with a situation that challenges how do you protect the estate from the loss that can happen if this happens to you? How do you find the right care? Just because you go on the internet and you look for companies that offer home care, you have to be very careful in who you select to take care of your ill spouse or ill person. And then the most probably pressing and challenging aspect of it is how do we pay for it? Where are we going to find the money to pay for this care? So let's talk about that. How can we pay for the circumstances that may occur? Well, if you go down the line of the obvious, I'll call it pots where the money can come from. Now remember, though, the number that we're talking about, it can run into close to $300,000 plus to handle a situation if you have to wind up in a nursing home or even assisted care. So you're looking at a huge amount of money that has to be set aside for these type of emergencies. So maybe you're fortunate and you're still working. But the question then is the monthly income that you're providing, does it have enough surplus, for example, for you to be able to set aside the money so you can have a nest egg to cover these emergencies? Have you, over the years, thought about this circumstance? Maybe you thought you never were going to live this long. Maybe if you would have known you were going to live to be 85, you would have planned different. Maybe you did think about this, and maybe you have savings. Maybe you have savings set aside to cover this type of emergency. And another one was a knee-jerk reaction that people do, which I will show you why it's not a good idea. And that is that you have a lot of equity in your home. You know that there's money built in. You can take a home loan. You can take a reverse mortgage. and you can either sell your home. So a lot of people come in and they say, well, my husband is ill. I'm going to have to find money to wait for long-term care and so forth. So I'm going to sell my home. Bad idea, and I'll explain to you why that is. The other one, which I don't think is going to work for the majority of us, and that is, why don't you ask your children to help pay for your long-term care? Why don't you call your brother? Why don't you call your grandchildren to come in and help you pay for it? I don't think that's going to work very well. I have yet to find families that are willing to go the distance. They certainly will show up and help you for short periods of time. But remember, your family members have their own life. They may live in other states. They have jobs. They have their own circle of life. So relying on the family may not necessarily be a good idea. Another one that I want to spend a few minutes talking about. There is a form of insurance called long-term care insurance that is available to pay for long-term care situations. Long-term care insurance is a type of insurance that can help you pay for in-home care. You don't have to go into a nursing home. They will pay for somebody taking care of you at home. Long-term care insurance is an absolutely wonderful tool. It's a tool that needs to be investigated. It's a tool that you have to look into. There are various types of long-term care insurance. I'm just going to give an example of one type of insurance that I have, and I'm going to simplify it. And basically, the problem that people have when they look at purchasing long-term care insurance, they think about it as, why in the world am I going to pay for long-term care insurance if I'm never going to use it? They associate paying for long-term care like paying for auto insurance. I'm paying for auto insurance, you're paying for auto insurance, and what has to happen for us to be able to cash in? Well, you're going to have an accident, but what if you never have an accident and you never file a claim for your auto insurance, and all these years you paid into auto insurance, you never used it, you lost the money. So the concept of, I don't want to make all these payments for all these years and then I never go into a nursing home and I lose the money. Listen to this. There are types of long-term care insurances where here's the following. You buy a policy and the policy says the following. If you have a need for long-term care, the money is available to you to use for long-term care. If you never use the money for long-term care, then the money then could be paid to a surviving spouse or beneficiary as the death benefit. So if you don't use it, you don't lose it because it's payable as a death benefit to a beneficiary. That is the type of insurance that you should look at, is the dual policy that is most available as a death benefit and also for long-term care. Now, the sweet spot for getting long-term care insurance, it's generally around 58 to 71, 72. And the reason I say that is that if you are too young, then you're going to wind up paying for a very long time. When you're young, you probably statistically may not need it. But if you wait too late, like in your late 70s, you may not be able to qualify because of health issues, or you may not be able to qualify because the rates are going to be astronomical. So I encourage everybody on this call to get together and investigate long-term care insurance, because this is an absolute tool that can be used in circumstances that you may face if you wind up with a health crisis. We work with a partner organization called Lifestyle Financial. And if any of you are interested in trying to find out how, when does it apply to you long-term care, simply jot down or send us an email and we'll put you in contact with these wonderful people and they can run illustrations. They can talk to you about long-term care insurance. So if you don't have a monthly income, if you don't have savings, if you don't want to sell your house, which I don't think is a good idea, if you don't want to ask your children and grandchildren to come up and pay for it, and if you don't have long-term care insurance, then what in the world is left? What can you do to help yourself? What can you do if you're faced with a circumstance and all of the above ways of paying for it are not available to you? Now what? Well, let's talk about it. There are two types of insurance that are out there. People get confused with the terminology. Hopefully, I can explain the differences. Number one, Medicare. I'll explain what Medicare is, but most of us understand that we can get Medicare generally when you're 65 years of age. You will automatically wind up with Medicare. And then there is Medi-Cal and Medicaid. What's the difference? Medicaid is I'll call it the generic term that is used throughout the whole United States. But California, I guess we're snobbish in the sense that we decided to have our own Medicaid rules, and therefore we call it Medi-Cal. So when you see the term Medi-Cal, it really is Medicaid, except that it's for California. So in this screen, you can eliminate the Medicaid title and think about having two insurance concepts, Medicare and Medi-Cal, that I will discuss that can help you for long-term care. So let's talk about Medicare. Let's find out what that is. Almost all of you who are over 65 years of age, you understand what Medicare is. Part A, for example, that provides for hospital insurance, and Medicare Part B, that is the type of insurance where you go see a medical doctor for medical visits and so forth. And then Medicare Part D is prescription drugs. That's Medicare. We all have Medicare, and a lot of us have, for example, supplemental insurance to cover the copays that Medicare may not cover, or the parts of Medicare doesn't pay for. We generally have what's called a supplemental insurance, and that is what we buy in order to supplement what Medicare doesn't pay. But Medicare is aimed to pay for hospitalization, prescriptions, medical doctor visits, and it is very limited in paying for a nursing home. So let's talk about that aspect of it. Why is Medicare limited in paying for a nursing home? There is a provision in Medicare that says that Medicare will pay for 100 days in a long-term care facility, a Medi-Cal facility. But the first 20 days of that 100 days are paid 100% by Medi-Cal, Medicare. And the next 80 days, there will be a copay. So the first 100 days of Medicare pays for long-term care. The first 20 days are 100%. The next 80 days, there's a copay. The copay amounts to, depending on whether you have assigned your Medicare benefits to maybe like Kaiser, there'll be a copay set by them and so forth. So there will be a copay. So what happens at the end of the 100 days? At the end of the 100 days, you're on your own. There's another thing that I want you to understand, and this is really important. And if all of you have for every year, if you get a Medicare supplement booklet that tells you what the rules are and so forth, I want you to read it, because in that Medicare booklet, you will see very clearly that it says that Medicare pays for the nursing home care. That's after a 3-day stay in the hospital. Now, let me also alert you to this. You have to be admitted into the hospital as an inpatient, not an outpatient. So if you ever have to go into the hospital on an illness, make sure that you are admitted as an inpatient, not an outpatient, because the requirement to go into a nursing home from the hospital after 3 days is if you were admitted as an inpatient. So be careful as to how the paperwork is filled out when you go into the hospital. This is important. All right. So if Medicare has a certain amount of payment for 100 days for long-term care, what happens when you run out of the 100 days and you're on your own? Now what? Well, let's talk about Medi-Cal. Remember, Medi-Cal is California's version of Medicaid. Think about this. Medi-Cal, we're talking Medicaid for California. Number one is The rules must conform to federal guidelines. And the reason for that is that the federal government pays for 1/2 of the Medicaid cost, and then California pays for the rest. California basically operates its own Medicaid program, Medi-Cal program, Medicaid program. Every state has similar setups. Every state, for example, has their own rules and regulations as to what is covered by Medi-Cal. Every state has different rules, for example, as to how you qualify for these benefits. So it's important to understand also that the state that you're going to be living in or you're going to wind up being ill in, you have to make sure that you understand what the benefits are for Medi-Cal under that particular state. Now, it just so happens that California is one of the most progressive, and I would say the most lenient states to apply for Medicaid, Medi-Cal. Okay, so I want to apply for Medi-Cal. How do I do it? Well, number one is the applicant must meet certain income and asset qualifications. I'll explain what they are. Medi-Cal, like I mentioned before, provides health insurance to 1/3 of Californians. And Medi-Cal pays for almost 65% of Californians in a nursing home. What does this tell you? Medi-Cal is a major program in California. There are a lot of people on Medi-Cal. There are different forms of Medi-Cal benefits. There are different forms of programs that you can avail yourself. Medi-Cal does not necessarily it's not simply just available for long-term care. There's other programs that are available. And it's important to understand that some of these other programs, for example, in-home health support is a program where they can come in and help you take care of your ill spouse in your home. But every one of these different programs in Medi-Cal have different qualifications. They have different income and asset qualification requirements. So you have the overall umbrella of Medi-Cal, and within that umbrella, you have all these different programs, but each program has different rules. So we have to try to understand what all these different rules are, depending on the program that you want to apply. So today, though, I'm going to be talking about the program that applies for going into a nursing home, because that's probably the one that's most important to all of us. All right. We all know that laws change every day. Congress meets, they change the laws. IRS laws are changed, state laws change. And of course, we have had a change in the Medi-Cal rules under a bill, Assembly Bill 133. You will run into this, I'll call it nomenclature, AB 133, all over the place, because AB 133 was passed in February of 2021. So it's a relatively new law that is changing the landscape as to what Medi-Cal is and how you apply for it. The purpose of this webinar is the following, at least in my opinion. I do not want any of you to fear applying for Medi-Cal. I don't want any of you to fear the word Medi-Cal. I want you to embrace this system. I want you to rely on this system as the backup system to pay for these humongous expenses of illnesses if they may occur to you. I want you to embrace Medi-Cal, not fear it. The changes that occurred on AB 133 is basically for nursing home care. That's what I'm going to concentrate on. It's affecting seniors older than 65, they're blind or disabled, individuals that are in nursing homes, and the current rules our assets are counted. That means that they're available to see how many assets you have, to make sure if you have too many, you're not going to be able to apply. Or assets can be exempt, meaning you can have these assets and they're not going to be counted. Or you can have assets that are unavailable. You can keep them, but they're not going to be counted either. So I have a chart here that I want to go over with you. This is the pictorial. I'm just going to summarize this. Obviously, Medi-Cal is so complicated that I'm trying to simplify so you can understand what happens and also to understand how we can help you. Now, I'm going to start, for example, with the, if you can see my cursor. This first bucket here is, for example, I'm going to take a couple. This book is going to hold all the property between the couple, between the husband and wife, that are community property and separate property. It's not going to matter that the husband has separate property or the wife has separate property. They're going to count everything in this bucket. So we start off with what we call available assets. Everything's available. Everything's on the table. So there is another bucket, though, that assets can be put into or be a part of. And that's the bucket. There's a bucket that holds exempt assets. Exempt meaning they're not counted. All right, exempt, not counted. So what is involved with the non-counted exempt bucket? As you can see, in California, you can have a home, $1 million home. It's a home, not counted. You can have a business property. You can have a car. You can have a Lamborghini, a $200,000 vehicle, a BMW Super Sport, $250,000. It's a car. You're allowed to keep one car, any value, not counted. It's exempt. Personal property, your sofa, your television, your Costco 85-inch QLED TV that you just bought. It's not counted, it's exempt. Term life insurance. That's the kind of insurance that doesn't have any cash value. You can have a $2 million term life insurance and it's not counted, it's exempt. And there's other assets that are exempt. Musical instruments, for example, burial plots. There's a whole list of assets that are in the exempt category. So when you come in for a discussion about Medi-Cal, first thing we want to do is we have to identify what you own. Second, we want to categorize it into what bucket are they going to fall in. Are they going to fall in the exempt bucket? We want to make sure that they fall in the exempt buckets. Remember, they're not counted. When I do these presentations, for example, at workshops, I always ask, can I qualify for Medi-Cal, a person who has a $2 million house, $20 million life insurance policy, and a $250,000 Lamborghini? Can I qualify that person for Medi-Cal? And everybody says no. The answer is yes. Home's exempt, car's exempt, term insurance is exempt. You understand? Second, the other bucket, unavailable. Certain type of annuities are exempt. An IRA, 401k, in the name of the well spouse. The well spouse is the spouse, for example, that's not going into the nursing home. What if husband's going into a nursing home and the spouse that stays at home, called the well spouse, sometimes we call them the community spouse. What if she has a $300,000 IRA? Not counted, unavailable. What if the IRA is in the person who's going into the nursing home? If the IRA is making periodic payments, it's not available. So I want you to understand this chart, that it is possible to legally assign assets into various buckets so that you can keep the assets that qualify for Medi-Cal. Now that I have given you the current version, now I'm going to enlighten you as to what changes have occurred with AB 133. From 1989, that's a long time ago, from 1989 to July 1 of 2022, how many years is that? Long time, right? The rule, and probably what you understand or hear or have heard for years, is that an individual that is trying to apply for Medi-Cal, they can only have $2,000 in their name. And for a couple, they can only have $3,000 in their name. So of course you're going to think that if all I can have is $2,000 in my bank account, how in the world am I ever going to qualify for benefits? Well, I'll just explain to you how you could by allocating assets to exempt and unavailable. AB 133 in February of 2021 changed the law that basically says the following. From July 1, 2022, and we believe up to January 1, 2024. Now, this is April 2023. So how many months we have to go before we get to January 2024? We have May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 8 months. 8. What's going to happen in 8 months? Well, let's talk about what happens now. This is 2023. Well, the $2,000 limit was increased to $130,000 for individuals. And for every other member living in the household, they add $65,000. In this example, if you have a husband and a wife, the person going into the nursing home can keep $195,000. That's a far cry from the $3,000. And if you have a child living with you, add another $65,000. So as of July of 2022, the rule already changed, allowing people to have more assets. What's going to happen in January 2024? The assets test will be eliminated. What does that mean? That means that going forward after 2024, they're not going to count assets to see if you qualify or don't qualify for Medi-Cal. Those are the rules as they stand as of today under AB 133. After January 1 of 2024, applicants are not going to be looked at as to how many assets they have, but they're going to be looking at how much income they have. And so now you can have an unlimited amount of assets, but now they're going to be focusing on income. And the current rule is that basically the person that's applying for Medi-Cal benefits, their income, their household income, their individual income cannot have more than 138 of the federal poverty level. Medi-Cal now will be looking at income. Medi-Cal now has limits as to how much income you can have to qualify for Medi-Cal. So 2023, the limits of income are annually $20,121 for a single and $27,214 for a couple. That's annual. That's income. So a lot of you are saying, wait a minute, I cannot live on $27,000 worth of income. Now what? Well, you can still qualify for Medi-Cal, but now excess income may go to share of cost. What does that mean? If, for example, a Medi-Cal bed, I'm going to use that easy number so we can all remember it. Let's assume that the Medi-Cal bed costs $15,000 a month. Then, if you're making, for example, $2,000 over the limit, then that amount of money will go to share costs. So instead of Medi-Cal paying the $15,000, they're going to subtract your share costs, and then they would pay the $12,000. So Medi-Cal will pay, but then you would have to add your share depending on the amount of income that is over the income limits. Now, we are in the process. The elder law community is in the process of evaluating various methods of how we can help our clients or people who want to apply for Medi-Cal, because we want to be able to understand, and we will understand, and how we can apply the new rules to this new paradigm that we now have, which is as of 2024, no assets will be counted, that we will be looking at income. We will understand how we can help you. Now, why is it important to understand these rules? Well, there are other benefits that people receive, and one of them is supplemental security income, SSI, or other cash assistance programs that meet different asset limits. CalFresh SNAP, for example. The asset limit for SSI remains at $2,000 for a single person and $3,000 for married couples. Now, the limit for the Medi-Cal program increased. The limit for SSI stayed the same. So if you're not careful and you understand what the limits are on assets for SSI, you may wind up losing the benefits, the SSI benefits, because you're focusing on the Medi-Cal rules, not SSI rules that were not changed. And the 2023 SSI federal rates for single people are now $914 a month, and for a couple, about $1,400 a month. And these limits, these income sources can be lost. So if you don't understand the difference, how other benefits, SSI, for example, and Medi-Cal work, the limits and qualification scenarios or requirements are different. So you have to be super careful as to how you manage the assets and the money, depending on what benefits the person is receiving or will receive. An example. Grandson was in a motorcycle accident. Young person and needs long-term care. Medi-Cal is paying for it. Here's the grandson, hurt in an accident. He needs long-term care. Medi-Cal is paying for it. Grandma She goes on the internet, looks up all these internet sites that don't understand what they're talking about. And she reads that, hey, California, there's no more asset limits. California in 2024, there's no more asset limits. I can leave my grandson any amount of money now without worrying about it. Okay. So grandma leaves grandson $500,000. Great. Assets, unlimited, $500,000. She thinks that's fine. But the $500,000 generates $2,500 a month. That's greater than the 1564 that the grandson could keep under the SSI rules, under Medi-Cal rules, and then grandson lost his Medi-Cal benefits. Again, the $500,000 generate $2,500 of income, which is greater than the amount that the grandson could keep to keep his Medi-Cal benefits, and he then lost the ability to have 100% Medi-Cal payment, so he had to come up with a share of cost, an additional $1,000 a month. Grandma left $500,000, generated $2,500 in income. It was more than the allowable amount of income that the grandson could keep, lost the Medi-Cal benefits, but could continue as long as he had the share of cost. So he had to cough up $1,000. Another example. Sally received Medi-Cal benefits. She was receiving SSI and CalFirst benefits. Sally's mother decided Sally, a special needs child, does not need a supplemental needs trust, as Medi-Cal now removed the asset limits. And so now Sally's mother again can leave Sally $100,000. So Sally received $100,000. Again, assets are not counted for Medi-Cal. So she did not lose the Medi-Cal benefits, but she lost her SSI and CalFirst benefits. Why? Because SSI and the CalFirst benefits stayed at $2,000. Remember Medi-Cal unlimited, SSI $2,000. So there's $100,000 that was left. Didn't have her lose the Medi-Cal, but she lost her SSI benefits. What's the point of these examples? The Medi-Cal state recovery rules and the Medi-Cal rules are complicated. California, like every state, has the ability to go back and recover for any monies that were spent on the Medi-Cal beneficiary during their lifetime. I'm going to give you an example. Let's assume that the Medi-Cal beneficiary over his lifetime received $300,000 of nursing care. Well, there's a requirement when somebody dies that the Department of Health Services, they're notified that the person who died, and they want to know, the Department of Health Service wants to know if they were on Medi-Cal. Well, once you send the letter to tell them that they died, they're going to go into their records and they're going to find out that, yeah, they were on Medi-Cal and we paid $300,000 for their benefit. So they're going to come after the estate. They want to get the $300,000 paid back. What are you talking about? Are you telling me that I go through all of this and I apply for Medi-Cal and I get benefits? And if the government pays these benefits, it's like a loan. And when I die, they're going to get the money back? That's what I'm saying. So how do you avoid it? Let me go back to this slide. California amended their recovery rules and they say the following. California can only recover against assets that are part of a probate estate. California can only recover against property that is part of probate estate. What is not part of probate? What property is not part of probate? You should know the answer. All of you should know the answer. Property that's held in your trust is not part of probate. So if your property is held in your revocable trust, California cannot recover against that property because trust property properly owned by the trust is not part of your probate estate. Qualifying for Medi-Cal is complicated. There are current rules, asset limited increases, AB 131, asset elimination rules, income rules. I want you to embrace Medi-Cal. I don't want you to fear it. I want you to understand that it's a doable procedure process that can help you. It can give you peace of mind if you understand how to work with the rules. Planning now ahead before a crisis occurs and following the rules so that we can avoid estate recovery. We can eliminate the government from being your beneficiary. The purpose of this presentation is to make you feel more comfortable to embrace Medi-Cal planning. You should have an advanced healthcare directive. You should have a durable power of attorney. We should have a properly funded trust. You should have, like our current trusts have, language in our trust that says that you will have the authority to do Medi-Cal planning if and when that is necessary. Language in your current trust so that you have authority to get into Medi-Cal planning without having to get a court order to accomplish the same thing. For those of you who are not our clients, Copenhagen, we've been around since 1979. 8 full attorneys, 2 attorneys of counsel, CPA, over 350 years of combined attorney experience. Half of us are certified specialists in probate, estate planning, and trust law. Half of us have advanced tax degrees. Large, highly qualified support staff in offices throughout Southern California. We do one thing only: estate planning. We don't do divorce. We don't do bankruptcy. We don't do criminal law. We do one thing. I hope you have learned something new. We're available to meet with you to discuss your situation. You're going to be receiving an automated phone call from us asking if you are interested in setting an appointment. Zoom appointments are wonderful, by the way, because generally these appointments are more of an exploratory type of call. So Zoom calls are definitely available to all of you, and also telephone calls. We're here to help you. We would love to hear from you. Did you learn something? Did you enjoy the presentation? We have a team standing by ready to help you with any questions that you might have. And we really look forward to hearing from you. Again, call us anytime. 800-244-8814. Or we can chat via Zoom or visit our website. And I see that there are some questions that I will look at and see if I can answer some of these questions that some of you have posed. Let me see what the questions are. I'm looking to see what they are. The question is, will there be a replay? And the answer is, this webinar will be available on YouTube and also will be available on our website. So absolutely, you will be able to listen to this webinar one more time. And that was an easy question. Let me see if I can answer another one. The question is, do exempt assets for Medi-Cal include more than one car? I'm single, have a basic automobile, collect antique cars and motorhomes. The answer is the exempt asset for a car is one car. But since you have other cars, collectors, antique cars, and motorhomes, these are vehicles. For example, the value can fall under the current under $30,000 limit, or after January 2024, it won't matter that you have 50 cars. Here's another question. Let me see if I can read this one. Well, I think that's it. There's only two questions that I can see. Again, I want to repeat this, that if you have other questions, write them down, call. I'll be more than happy to get together with you on those questions. Now, if you do end up with a consultation, we're going to be sending you a confidential data questionnaire, and we would like for you to complete it, and then obviously any questions that you might have for us so we can respond to everything. We're here to help you. Remember, don't be afraid of Medi-Cal. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we're happy to have seen you again. And I hope that we see you soon at one of our appointments. Thank you very much.